One. Hello, chefs. Good evening. We are back again. I'm Isaiah, the young Jedi chef, here with the Dragon Warrior chef, German Lamb, and we will be your host for today's podcast. Yeah, real topics that need to be heard in the industry. In this podcast, you will hear the truth, real, raw, and unfiltered. Today, we have the honor of having Chef John with us to talk about the culture of ladies and gentlemen in the hospitality industry. I'm excited to get started and jump right in. So, without further ado, I'll let the star of our show, our guest, Chef John, introduce himself. Chef John.
Hi. First of all, I want to say that I am a graduate of the Culinary Institute of America. That's where you are, Isaiah. Great school. I had great experience, great time there. After leaving and graduating, I should say, I decided to move to Boston. The Hudson Valley did not have great job opportunities back then. And when I came to Boston, I first worked with the original chefs of the Toll House in Whitman, Massachusetts. Remember the Toll House cookie? Well, I worked with those guys, and all through my time there, I was yearning to do something bigger and better. And remembering an old chef at the CIA, Chef Sonnerschmidt always said, if you go to Boston, you got to work at the Ritz-Carlton. I saw an ad in the newspaper. I answered it. I became a lunch cook in the cafe in 1976 and paid my dues. I worked a year in the cafe and was well respected. Had a great attitude about work, and following the orders of the executive chef, I soon was promoted into the main kitchen in the garde manger area. I was the chef garde manger and made my rounds to be the butcher, the baker, and the pastry maker, so to speak. Um, so then became the sous chef of the evening shift, the executive sous chef of the entire hotel. And when my time was right at the age of 30, I became the executive chef. In 1983, the hotel was sold. It became the new Ritz-Carlton. And being a member of the executive committee, we uh, kind of joined heads and came up with a credo for the new Ritz-Carlton company, and that was ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. It was basically what it's saying is that be nice to everybody, show people respect, don't think you know everything. And certainly, if you're in the front of the house with customers, look sharp, don't wear dirty sneakers, address them properly, treat them as ladies and gentlemen, and they will treat you as ladies and gentlemen, and vice versa. In the kitchen, who you work with, you need to have that same attitude.
Yeah, and first of all, Chef, thank you so much. It is such a great honor to be have you on this podcast. Alumni of CIA, graduated first class, part of the first opening team for the Ritz-Carlton Boston. It's such an honor. So thank you so much for being a part of this. Our viewers today are gonna really enjoy this conversation. So when I think back to some of the best experiences that I have ever had while dining out in a restaurant, staying at a hotel on vacation, or working in the kitchen, I think back to times when I was surrounded by ladies and gentlemen who provided great hospitality. It's extremely important to make sure that your guests and employees are feel respected, they feel appreciated, understood, loved, and heard. This is exactly what ladies and gentlemen do. One of the greatest and most important things that a lady or gentleman can do to go is go out of their way to serve others. So this next question kind of goes off of that. What does it mean to be a lady or gentleman as a hospitality professional? And how can ladies and gentlemen go out of their way to serve others, such as guests or employees?
Well, it basically comes down to training, I think, a little bit. If you're not experienced in the world of fine dining and service, you need to gain that experience. And you said, dining out yourself, you saw a different world. Basically, that's how I got to appreciate uh, good service, professionalism, Um, and knowing that I could do it myself if I applied certain rules to my game. Um, don't be a yeller and screamer. Don't think that you're the only person in the room. Treat your fellow workers with respect. Um, Offer ideas and suggestions when you see one of your fellow employees doing something that doesn't fit the profile of being respectful. So yeah, it's training. When I mentioned the Ritz-Carlton and the new Ritz-Carlton, we were originally independently owned. Then a developer bought the hotel company, and people had to change a little bit. We had many, many training seminars that taught different department heads how to speak to their employees in their department to sort of get them on board of, we're really good, we do things well here, we respect each other, and we want the same to apply to the customers who come through the front door. Happy greetings. Let me carry your suitcase for you, or a waiter serving somebody at the table, being respectful and answering questions, just being nice and being observant, but not being overly observant at the table.
Yeah.
Give people some space and let them enjoy. I think that's a sense of respect.
Yeah, and
That's so
I
that's where I
yeah.
come from.
Yeah, I totally agree. One of the greatest things in hospitality is to respect people. And when people feel respected, they'll come back to your establishment and they'll want to give you, be your guest. So I think respect is one of the biggest aspects of this industry. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Chef. Chef Lamb.
Well, you know what, ladies and gentlemen, would not come into my vocabulary if it wasn't for Chef John Vyhnanek, who hired me when I graduated from Newberry College with the culinary degree. And the only position he had for me was the cafeteria cook. So just imagine you graduated and someone says, hey, by the way, we don't have a rounds cook for you. We don't have a line cook for you. We don't have a garment aid. We don't have a banquet. You are the employee cafeteria cook, meaning you cook for the employees. And for whatever reason, I accepted that, and it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about myself. It taught me a lot about people. So for me, ladies and gentlemen, that was all new. What the heck is ladies and gentlemen? But then I realized it's working with your coworker where you're coexisting and there's a respect for one another, And to me, for a male chef, gentlemen, that says it all. We're wearing the white jacket. It's a very powerful uniform, and it's the way you present yourself. But then I realized the way you present yourself is how you approach cooking. So one way is the same thing, you know what I mean? Because you have to be gentle, you have to be patient. And from there, it really develops you. So that's how the ladies and gentlemen model came into my world.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I think having that structure, like you said, behind the jacket, as a chef, you should automatically become a lady or a gentleman because that discipline and that structure that you have goes into your food. If you're dressed sloppy, if you're out of character, that's gonna show in your food and the final product. So I think definitely having that structure, that respect for yourself, and it ends up turning into respect for the food, and then ends up respect for the guests. So I think that's definitely a huge part of this industry. So thank you for that great insight. Just as important as it is to give your guests the best possible experience when they stay or dine with you, it is equally as important to treat your employees with the same amount of respect. Oftentimes, employees are not valued as much as they should be. It can be forgotten that employees are the biggest assets to any successful establishment. When you take care of and treat your employees like ladies and gentlemen, they will become motivated to work harder for you. As a leader in the kitchen, how do you make your employees feel special? And in what ways has doing so paid off, Chef John?
Well, I think talking with your staff is a really important thing, getting to know them. Whether you're working in a hotel or you're working in a small restaurant or a private club, you're going to wind up spending more time together than you are with your family at home. So, make that effort to understand that, oh, geez, Bobby likes skiing. He on his day off, he goes to New Hampshire. So, when he comes to work on Wednesday morning, hey, Bobby, how much snow did you have? Did you hit any trees? Have some fun about it, but let them know that you're really interested in their personal life. That gets you a lot of respect yourself. Hey, geez, the chef likes me. Did you hear him talk to me about skiing? Okay. So now when he tells me to, clean the lettuce, geez, I'm going to clean the lettuce twice. I'm just going to give a little extra effort. Um, and also, don't make work difficult. I mean, after all, when you decide to enter this profession, you've got a job. It's just like a construction worker. You've got to weld your steel beams, or but how well do you do that? How do you carry yourself uh during the time of day that you have your prep list, and you got this job to do, that job to do, and all of a sudden somebody orders 10 club sandwiches. Don't complain that, oh my God, I got to make 10 club sandwiches. How am I going to finish my other work? Don't be, put it under your belt, accept the fact that this is what it is, and look to the future of, what am I going to do after this job? Where am I going to be in 5 years? And how can I improve my attitude and my being so that somebody really wants to hire me for my next position?
Yeah, so if you hit all those points on the head, I think one of the points that really touched me the best is when you said get to know your employees and have that personal relationship with your employees. I think that is super important because when, as an employee, when you go in and you know that your boss cares about you and they're just not there to kind of as a slave, that when they truly care about your personal life, you want to work harder for them. And I think that's one of the greatest things that a leader could do is kind of get to know their employees on a personal level. And that also creates employee loyalty and just does so much for your restaurant or whatever business. So I think that's definitely a great point, Chef Lamb.
Well, you know what? For me, I would say the gentleman part helped me connect with my sous chefs and the way I approach each task, whether it is, 7 cases of asparagus where you got to peel and, the attitude and just, it's part of the journey. And for me, that was my mentorship in Boston. So, all the sous chefs in the kitchen, they shared their technique, their preparation, their method when it came to the French technique. So for me, I took that, and once I left the Ritz, wherever I went to, I used that formula how authentic and real it was to connect with someone, and once you connect with someone, everything falls in place, So to me, that's something where as a chef, we create art, and same thing, we create development, training of our culinary teams.
Exactly. Yeah, it's all about, like you said, creating that, being structured and disciplined in that way. So even as a lady and gentleman, oftentimes we can still make mistakes and things are still, bound to happen to go sometimes the way we don't plan on. So the key is as a lady and gentleman to react differently than most people would react. So when mistakes are made, how does a professional lady or gentleman react to a mistake they have made, and how should they respond to criticism?
Well, that's a good question. Um, First of all, when you make a mistake, I believe you made a mistake, but you just don't want to admit it, you know. But the right thing to do is geez, I made a mistake. I think I better tell the chef or your supervisor that, you know, God, I grilled the steak and it burnt on one side and, I flipped it over and I served it anyway. That's a big mistake. It happens in the real world. It's like flipping an egg for breakfast. You cook it too much on one side and the other side's nice and sunny, nice and over easy. You anyway, admit you made a mistake and learn to temper your feelings. I mean, it's not going to kill you, just don't do it again. You know what the mistake was, stop it so from happening again. Um, but mistakes are not just in cooking, mistakes are you had a bad night, you come to work and, somebody's not keeping up with their responsibilities in the kitchen and they ask you to, hey, could you peel some potatoes for me? And you lose it and you start yelling at people like, oh, geez, what do you want me to do that for? And so you're starting conflict. Um, Basically learn to be calm, let things roll off of your shoulder a little bit. Yes, it needs to be corrected. Find a way to correct it without being a son of a gun.
Exactly. Yeah, I like that point because a lot of times when it gets so crazy and so hectic in the kitchen, we like to start yelling and screaming and get really frustrated. But I find when you're that way, you tend to make even more mistakes than the original problem. It just keeps on spiraling like a domino effect. It's one after the other. So I think having control and remaining kind of in your a good mental state is one of the most important things to do in the kitchen because you're responsible for so many things. And if you let one thing get out of hand, then it leads to the next. And,
Mhm.
it's one thing after the other. So I think that's super important. Remaining mentally strong is one of the greatest things you can do as a professional, ladies and gentlemen.
And it takes practice.
It does. It
You
does.
have to experience it first to understand that you can overcome those hard feelings that come with making a mistake.
Yeah, yeah. And I made so many mistakes in the kitchen and where I made a mistake and my heart's beating so fast, like, oh, what is chef gonna say? What is this? But it's you got to get over that because mistakes at the end of the day they make you better and they make you
Right. Part of the
stronger
learning
because yeah,
process.
you learn from them exactly. I learned the most I've ever learned from the mistakes that I've made. So definitely don't be afraid to make mistakes, but when you do, you gotta know how to react and how to be professional about it. So that's super important. Chef Lamb.
Well, you know what? There's two parts because it takes two people, not just you suddenly, owning up that you make a mistake. From what I have learned is that it's show and tell. And show and tell meaning, hey, here's a filet mignon. This is how we grill it. And you observe it and you take that prototype and you place it right in front of you where now you have all these other filet mignons and now it teaches you like, okay, here's your prototype. And that's what cooking's about, right? You understand when, how, and when it's done, you take it out, right? But then the other part is the chef has to have clear communication. So if the chef doesn't have clear communication, guess what? You make a mistake without even knowing it. So to me, I learned about, in our industry is that it's show and tell, the way you position your body, the posture, knife technique, you got to really clean all the habits that suddenly will get you to that point of making mistakes. So for me, did I make a lot of mistakes? Absolutely, but it was beautiful because for each mistake that I made, I learned how to correct it because the chef taught me, okay, this is how we correct it. So to me, it's like, making a sauce and suddenly I added too much roux and then you're like, oh my God. So now I realize instead of having 1 gallon of sauce, the finished product, but now when you fix it, you get 3 gallons of finished product. So what you just did was you just, diluted the product, but you was taught how to fix it. So it depends on what mistakes are made. And some of them are able to be like, okay, but then some of them like, okay, what are you going to do with 2 gallons of extra sauce?
Yeah, you're right. And I think one of the best ways that you kind of touched on avoid making such big mistakes is to ask before you do. Ask for a solid example from the chef before you go ahead with the task. Make sure you understand exactly what needs to happen in every way, so that way there's at the end there's no confusion. Because even when I've worked in the kitchen before, I wasn't super clear on the task, and I didn't clarify it with the chef, and then it ended up being something totally different from what the chef wanted. So I think having clarification and not being afraid to kind of ask as many questions. No question is a dumb question when it comes to uh, being in the kitchen, because in the kitchen, so things are such expensive, and the smallest mistake could end up being something huge. So I think that's one of the biggest things. Make sure you're clear and get a solid example from the chef, and don't be afraid to ask questions. I think that's one of the biggest things that definitely helps, and it shows that you're a solid lady and gentleman in the kitchen. So to wrap it up, how do you believe you can inspire people in the hospitality industry to become ladies and gentlemen? How is this trait learned, Chef John?
Well, I mentioned training earlier. That's a very important process to go through to understand, what final result the company or chef or owner wants. But also, I think, if you were, say, 26 years old and you never experienced going to a fine dining restaurant such as La Bernardin in New York, or even to the Bellagio and some of their restaurants. Save your money, go out to dinner, and see how a really well-run professional restaurant operates. It gives you a completely different perspective. I mean, you might not be working, for the Four Seasons today. You might be working at Joe's Bar and Grill, but you can still, learn to be, a lady and gentleman serving ladies and gentlemen there. Um, but for the fine dining aspect of it, it'll give you a completely new perspective on cooking and where you want to be, in your life, in your career.
Yeah, that's a great point. Definitely go into the field, go into that area where you want to be. Experiencing that fine dining at that level, you kind of understand what those people do and how they treat their guests, and you learn from that. And you could, like you said, take that into your environment, even though you might not be in a Michelin star environment right now. Showing that you have those abilities and you can work like that and treat your guests like that, you stand out from your other employees, and that's how get a step up there from everybody else. So definitely, that's super super important. Chef
A
Lamb.
little a little
Oh, sorry.
side story to this about
Uh-huh.
service. Um, Years ago, smoking was allowed in restaurants, right? In hotels. And the waiters at the Ritz in the dining room would come over with a match lit as soon as somebody took a cigarette out of their pocket.
Yeah,
That's
notice it.
ladies and gentlemen serving ladies and gentlemen. It's
Exactly.
anticipation of good service.
That's an awesome point, Chef. Knowing, I know in some higher end restaurants, they know exactly what you want to drink, so they'll have the drink ready when you come in. It's
Hmm.
like that personalization makes the guest feel special, and that's so you have repeat customers. So that's super important. Super important. Great point, Chef Lamb.
Well, you know what? I would say this, right? In today's culinary and hospitality world, and especially after pre-COVID, the industry has changed. So for me, I would say I was lucky. The timing was right. I met, my mentor, Chef John Vyhnanek, at that era, '96, and this era, it's different. And to me, I would say you really have to, visit, go to a restaurant, go to hotels. Hey, I want to meet the chef. Chef, can you give me a tour around the kitchen? You know what I mean? I mean, they would be honored to say, hey, come, because right now they're looking for people, right? They're looking for staff, whether it's the front of the house, the back of the house, and also, understand what that environment culture really is. Because for me, I didn't know what fine dining was. I didn't know what five-star was. I was clueless, but I understood what the Ritz-Carlton brand was about. If you talk about etiquette, you talk about business, they are the benchmark. So right now, I would say, ladies and gentlemen, in another meaning, it would be a self-care, self-improvement. You know, what do you want to do from presentation? So this way, when you do go for an interview, you look like a gentleman and you look like a lady. So in one way, it's really, and that comes with maturing. You know what I mean? That's come with maturing. And also go to these establishments. And now, how do you feel? You know, do you feel comfortable or do you feel like out of place? And like, what would make you feel comfortable and into that environment? You know, so the thing is, it's like, you know, you're there, but also understanding that you want to be your personal best, right? You want to go to, you know, to one of these establishments, suddenly, you know, your hair is it's not the way it should be, or you're wearing something, or you know, it's just presenting. And I would say that's what I learned at, you know, at the Ritz was uh, first impressions.
Mhm. Yeah, first impression is definitely a big thing. And I think not just going out to eat at the restaurant, but going to do stages is super important as well. And when you go to that stage, making, like you said, Chef, a great first impression, because that's all you have. Showing up with sharp chef whites, your knives sharpened, showing that you're willing to kind of do whatever and learn
Yeah.
as much as possible is the most important thing. And it's because you and have business cards with you because you never know who you're gonna meet. And like when I was in California for this event, and I met somebody really well connected, and I didn't have any business cards on me, and he gave me his, but he was like, "Don't let it happen again. Next time, make sure you're prepared with your business cards." And kind of I was shown the proper way to hand a business card over with respect. So it's kind of the small things that make a difference and make you stand out. So I think that's definitely super important, the first impression, and people remember your the lasting first impression, good or bad. So to wrap it up, chefs, any comments? First of all, I just want to say before we wrap it again, thank you so much. This is very iconic. We have three, basically two generations of mentors: Chef Lamb with Chef John, and then me with Chef Lamb. So this is kind of a great call. It was a great conversation. But to wrap it up, any finishing words, chefs?
I would say, you know, if you're just coming out of school right now, research different restaurants of where you want to live. You know, maybe you're going to live in your hometown. So find the best restaurants in your hometown that have the best reputation and, you know, try to work in one of those. And then, you know, just spend a year, you know, get some experience under your belt and always climb the ladder. So the next position, you know, gets you, you know, maybe up to the sous chef level. And then you're there for a couple years and then you move up to be the chef in a restaurant. Look to the future, do your best.
Mhm. Definitely. Thank you so much, Chef Lamb.
I would say the business we're in is very taxing, and body, mind, spirit, and food, those are your um, offense and defense to actually get through, because you're always on your feet, you're always moving, your hands are moving. So one way you are an athlete. So one way I would say is condition yourself, and conditioning yourself meaning, you know, you're working out. I took martial arts. That helped me, you know, read, especially today, you know, you go on the computer, you could learn so much about how
Mhm.
to make this from this chef around the world. So one way is preparing yourself, is doing the homework now. So now when you actually go into this environment, the chef is going to go, wow, you are a different breed. You are an icon and you are a unicorn. So that's the
Exactly.
whole thing. So when I was at the Ritz in Boston, I was conditioned. So that's why I was able to learn and pick up things. If I wasn't conditioned, I would not have, you know, met Chef John. He was like, he would say, no, this kid doesn't have it. You know, this kid doesn't have the characteristic and DNA. But it's like your character, you know, your body language. So these are the
Exactly.
things that, you know, it's not judging a book by its cover, but it really tells you where that person is.
Exactly. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, that is super important. So, thank you guys so much for all your words of encouragement, all your stories. It has been great. This call will not only impact those that are listening, but it will impact those that are impacted by those that are listening. So I thank you guys so much. We have made history today on this call. See you guys on our next call. Thank you.